One of Canada's most audacious trade reversals in recent memory may be on the horizon. Once a safeguard for manufacturers, Ottawa's 100% tariff on Chinese EVs led to Beijing's counterattack with punishing canola tariffs that left prairie farmers reeling. The rhetoric is changing now. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, indicates adaptability. Farmers and manufacturers want clarity, and Foreign Minister Mélanie Joly acknowledges that the policy is being reviewed. Crops, automobiles, and Canada's economic future were all on the line. Hold on tight. Everything could alter with the upcoming developments. 1. How EV tariffs and farm blowback started the standoff. EV tariffs and farm blowback, how the standoff started. Canada made the audacious decision to impose a 100% tax on electric vehicles manufactured in China in October 2024. The Trudeau administration's action was marketed as a lifeline for Canada's auto industry, buying time for homegrown producers who were having difficulty keeping up with the international EV competition. China's rapid ascent, according to policymakers, was driven more by generous subsidies than by competition, endangering Canadian factories before they could establish themselves. Trade conflicts, however, always retaliate. Beijing responded within months by imposing harsh tariffs on Canadian farmers. Other exports, including canola peas, were severely impacted. In particular, canola seed was subject to a 75.8% tariff. Farmers in Saskatchewan and the Prairie provinces, where China is a vital market, were the target of a planned strike. What started out as a car protective wall swiftly turned into a two-front economic battle, with farmers on one side and automakers on the other. In trade, Canada had to learn the hard way. The shield of one enterprise can turn into another sacrifice. Additionally, Ottawa's once iron posture started to reveal cracks as the shockwaves spread. The changing tone of Ottawa, from hardline to hesitancy. The changing tone of Ottawa, from hardline to hesitancy. In order to give Canadian automakers breathing room, Ottawa maintained for months that the 100% EV tariff was an impermeable shield. But fissures started to appear by the middle of 2025. Farmers were saying that they couldn't live without China, their biggest client, setting up meetings and vigorously lobbying. The value of the canola sector alone is close to 43 billion CAD, which sustains more than 200,000 jobs, numbers that are too large to overlook. The first indications of adaptability were demonstrated by Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe's audacious visit to Beijing. Prime Minister Mark Carney publicly thanked it after initially criticizing it, indicating that Moe's outreach could lead to opportunities. Shortly after, Mélanie Joly, the foreign minister, cautiously acknowledged that the policy was being reviewed. Diversification from Europe, South Korea, and Japan is floating. Heath MacDonald, the Minister of Agriculture, was even blunter. The tariff itself was up for discussion. When combined, these indications indicated a dramatic change. Rigid defiance was no longer emanating from Ottawa. It was shifting in the direction of practical adaptation, realizing that both farmers and consumers required assistance. Additionally, the auto industry was collapsing due to unforeseen effects as Ottawa's politics changed. Prior to going forward, please hit the like and subscribe buttons for us. This enables us to connect with more car enthusiasts like you. 3. EV market repercussions. Ineffective policies. EV market repercussions. Ineffective policies. The Canadian auto industry was also feeling the pinch, but canola farmers were the ones who took the brunt of the reprisal. Instead of protecting automakers, the 100% tax was hurting the EV business. By the middle of 2025, in the second quarter, sales fell from more than 18% of new registrations to just 8.6%, an almost 40% year-over-year decline. Customers had to deal with declining incentives and rising costs. While governments reduced their subsidies, the majority of premium EVs exceeded the federal rebate ceiling. In May, British Columbia completely abandoned its program, and following public outcry, Quebec barely maintained its own. Due to the limited number of reasonably priced models, potential customers left. Chinese EVs, which are renowned for their affordable high-tech designs, could have filled the void, but the tariff excluded them. As a result, there were fewer options, adoption fell, and the drive to meet electrification goals stalled. In response, Ottawa announced assistance funding for struggling automakers and canceled its 2026 zero-emission sales goal. Ironically, just as automakers struggled and worldwide competition increased, a strategy intended to boost Canada's EV industry instead left it in a state of collapse. China's counterattack continues to hit prairie farmers the hardest. Canola is at the center of prairie fallout. Automakers faltered, but the impact on prairie farmers was even more severe. Canola. The trade war turned Canada's agricultural crown jewel into a battleground. A 6.5% decline in futures and concerns about overstock resulted from China's 75.8% tariff on canola seed, which shut down the market. The impact was severe for Saskatchewan, a province that depends heavily on canola. Farmers cautioned that without access to their largest customer, which is expected to generate exports of about $5 billion CAD in 2024, they would not be able to weather another season. Ottawa made an effort to appear confident. Prime Minister Carney cited Scott Moe's September visit to Beijing as a positive move, while Agriculture Minister Keith MacDonald promised possible assistance. However, farmers became increasingly irate, believing that their means of subsistence had been foregone in order to safeguard Ontario's automobile industry. Federal politicians walked a tightrope as prairie premiers demanded relief. Subsidies were not desired by farmers. They desired trade to be resumed. Unsold harvests accumulated daily, debt increased, and rural communities faced deterioration. The agricultural heartland of Canada was being severely damaged by what had begun as a vehicle tariff shield, and tensions were at an all-time high. Ottawa must now make a critical choice regarding its future course. The next steps: choices, risks, and opportunities. Next steps: choices, risks, and opportunities. Canada is at a turning point. Maintain the 100% tariff or take a more practical stance. Tensions would be quickly reduced by complete removal, restoring farm earnings and reopening China's huge canola market. Additionally, it might make inexpensive Chinese EVs available, reviving a faltering local market. However, the U.S. has already squeezed automakers. Global competitors and tariffs fear a deluge of competition. Partial rollback is a midway ground that protects consumers while reducing their suffering. Additionally, while negotiating concessions from Beijing, Ottawa may diversify by increasing imports from South Korea and Japan. Joe Lee, the foreign minister, went so far as to propose using tariff relief as leverage. Making demands for investment from Canadian factories and Chinese manufacturers is transforming the crisis into an opportunity. The dangers are obvious. Ontario's political backlash, skepticism about China's dependability, and the appearance of caving in to pressure. But the benefits: stronger competition and cheaper EVs that revived farm trade are equally persuasive. The choice will have long-term effects on families, factories, and farms, influencing Canada's economic identity. This leads us to the crucial query: will Canada make a calculated change or strengthen the tariff wall? Conclusion: a watershed in Canada's trade history. Conclusion: a watershed in Canada's trade history. Canada faces a crucial decision: maintain the 100% tariff wall or adopt a more adaptable approach. The hardline stance's effects are already evident. Farmers are bearing the brunt of the hardship as EV sales have plummeted and inexpensive models have vanished. Time was bought by protection. However, it hasn't produced much momentum. A more intelligent course is emerging. In order to maintain competitive pricing, Ottawa may tie tariff relief to concrete benefits, regain